Ooh, is it that time of year again? I think it is. What is going on, everyone, and welcome to WreckTalk. We're what, 23, 22, 21 days from kicking off with Colorado, and boy, I'm giddy about it. So what is this video? We're going to look at Georgia Tech last year, what they're losing, some staff moves, what they're gaining, and then a Georgia Tech homer. What does he have to say about his own team? I'm going to predict every single game in the 2025 season. And then at the end, probably something not so pleasant. Look, all good things must come to an end. Obviously, you can't do this forever. So stay tuned. We'll address that at the end of the video. But before we get into all that, let's hear a word from the official sponsor of WreckTalk, King's Ransom.
King's ransom. It's the ransom of the king. King's ransom. It's a Madison tale thing. King's ransom. It's the official sponsor of WreckTalk. King's ransom. King's ransom.
Huge thanks to King's Ransom for being the official sponsor of WreckTalk. One of the best ways you can support the channel is by supporting our sponsors. So go to kingsransomUSAtoday.com. And if I had been using it lately, I'm about to, my beard would probably look 5 times as good. If you can make this beard look good, you got a product you can depend on. So let's get back to it. One of the, if not the, and I'd be willing to say the trendiest pick in all of college football for an underdog, overperforming team is Georgia Tech. Anyone with a college football YouTube channel has made a video about Georgia Tech and saying, hey, sleeper team, sleeper playoff team, Haynes King, the greatest unknown entity ever, whatever. But those are just as a Georgia Tech fan, usually when the most is expected, like the highest expectations, Tech does the worst, and vice versa. When you have the lowest expectations, they do the best. But set that aside. That doesn't have anything to do with whether they actually are or aren't going to win. Let's look in what they did last year. So they go 7-6, which is a repeat record-wise of Key's 2023 campaign. Though, you know, looking back on it, does it feel like they did better? Yes, they had a major upset against Miami that basically threw them out of the playoffs and ACC championship. So now we can still laugh at Miami fans for only making one ACC championship berth in their entire existence in the ACC. But this video isn't to crap on Miami. I would much rather crap on Florida State. So it starts with this monumental win, or what felt like a monumental win over Florida State. It ended up not being a good win and feeling like a struggle when you see what Florida State did afterward. Now, we all know WreckTalk's a man of his word. I said I would run all the Florida State fans off the internet, and I did for a time. However, we're in the offseason, and they're back telling us that Casanellis is going to be the greatest quarterback ever. But whatever. Good way to start the campaign for Georgia Tech last year with a win over Florida State, who was ranked 10th at the time. Go figure. Big win against Miami. The Duke win looks pretty good. I mean, Duke won 10 games last year. Georgia Tech just played Duke well as of lately. So they go 5-3 in the ACC. They do end with a 2-game losing streak to the God-blessed SEC, though. And look, I get that bowls are weird now because every other player hits the portal and no one really cares, or they do care if they win, whatever. You shouldn't be losing to Vandy, though. Shouldn't be losing to Vandy. And you should have beat Georgia. Now, you didn't. You didn't. You let your foot off the gas defensively in the second half of that game and did not take advantage of 3 different opportunities in overtime where you could have walked off a win. So not taking anything away from Georgia in that game. But damn, you beat them everywhere but on the scoreboard. And that's got to change. I mean, you got to win the games when the opportunity presents itself to you. Now they finish 7th in the ACC behind, let me look at my notes here. Clemson, SMU, Miami, Syracuse, Duke, in Louisville. Interesting thing here looking at it is you beat 3 of the teams that you finished behind. I would imagine that's not a common occurrence. Rush offense last year, they were second in the ACC, 32nd nationally, which that kind of surprised me because it felt like Georgia Tech took a step back rushing wise last year, which I guess they did one spot. They were ranked first in the ACC the year before. Tech was plagued with injuries at the running back position, but hey, every team is. That's why you've got to have 5 guys at a minimum that can go at the running back position year in and year out. Pass offense, 10th in the ACC, 54th nationally. That's got to get better. Buster Faulkner has talked about it in press conferences. If you're going to get to where you want to go, if you're going to compete for the conference and have an outside shot looking in at the playoffs, you've got to be able to throw the ball downfield. You know, we're 10th in the ACC in pass offense and probably near the top in passing efficiency, which is because most of those throws were screens. They were 5 yards or in. Got to get better at throwing the ball downfield and opening up other plays in your playbook coming in this year. Total offense, 6th in the ACC, 424 yards a game. Got to get better there. Behind all of those same teams in total offense. Rush defense, 30th. So they did take a slight step back there. They did have first-year DC Tyler Santucci, who immediately said, nope, I want to go to the NFL. This college game is out of control. I don't know the reasons he left, but look, Georgia Tech has been through 4 DCs in 3 years, I believe. They started with Andrew Thacker, who was a carryover from Collins, which, hi, South Carolina fans, you're going to really enjoy that some of you idiots were defending him. You deserve the worst in life, and you're going to get it because he's on your coaching staff. Either way, we fire Thacker, promote Kevin Scherer, who I believe is now the DC at Georgia State. Fire him at the end of the season, get in Tyler Santucci. He leaves to go to the NFL. Now you have Blake Gideon. So can he keep improving the defense? We'll see. Blake Gideon comes in from Texas. He's a Texas guy, played at Texas. Now he's never been a DC before. So for all of the people that are saying, oh, Georgia Tech shoe in to win 8 or 9, like the floor is 8 games for Georgia Tech. Well, you got to think about this. They have a new DC. They have a new DC that's never called plays before as well. Now, the good part of him is he's a defensive backs guy. Georgia Tech's loaded fairly heavy in the defensive back room, especially with people like Tay Harris that we flipped from Clemson, who comes in. Dalen Pinson, who a bunch of people threw money and we were able to keep, had the top passing defense in the SEC and like 6th in the nation. However, again, he's never been a DC before, so you just cannot, in my opinion, expect a guy like that to come in and light the world on fire year one with players he hasn't recruited. The other problem on Georgia Tech's defense, for everyone saying the floor is a minimum of 8 games, is they only have 1 player returning on that defensive line that played a snap last year, to my knowledge, and that's Jordan Vandenberg. Now, Jordan Vandenberg's a hell of a player. Probably as strong as anyone in college football. He squats like 600-700 pounds or something ridiculous. But he's the only guy coming in that has snaps in a Georgia Tech jersey. All right. Now you do bring in some guys from a lower level, like Manley from Mercer, Triplette. I think he's from San Jose State. So you bring in some guys, but they haven't played at this level before, and they haven't played in this scheme, to my knowledge, before. So that is important because if you're going to beat a team like Clemson, which I'm not saying they are, we'll get into that in a second, and you can't get pressure on Cade Klubnik, he's going to kill you. And that's going to be rinse and repeat for any team that has a decent quarterback and halfway decent receivers. You just can't cover receivers for forever, right? Now, we do retain Buster Faulkner. Now, I did listen to Lou's season prediction about Georgia Tech, and what really irritated me about that is I could not tell whether he thought Buster Faulkner's play calling in the 8 overtime period was good or bad. I wish he'd come out and clearly, state that, but I don't know, with the mealy mouth way he did it, I couldn't tell whether he agreed with Buster's play calling there or not. But we do retain Buster. Look, there's been a ton of teams that have thrown a ton of money at Buster Faulkner. Georgia Tech makes him the highest paid coordinator in Georgia Tech history and top 10 in the country. Now, this goes beyond like the football field a little bit, but these are things that Georgia Tech just hasn't done before. The biggest criticism that people have had against Georgia Tech, and I think it's somewhat fair, is they haven't shown the commitment to football that other teams have, particularly with the money, right? I mean, and the direction that college football is going, you got to have that. They lose Jay Batt to was it East Lansing to Michigan State. Hire a guy that I think's going to be pretty good in Ryan Alpert from Tennessee, because all he's talking about is raising money. So point being, we retain Buster, yada yada yada. Brent Key's coming in to what, his third full year now. And he's 18-16. So he goes 4-4, 7-6, 7-6. So he's just over 500. And it's been, and look, I'm a huge Brent Key supporter. You're probably not going to find anyone that's as gung-ho about Brent Key as me. And I think he's done more with less, probably better than anyone over the stretch that he's been at Georgia Tech. Really good wins. The Miami win. We can't lose to North Carolina, right? Beats North Carolina in his interim year with a MacGyver together quarterback room in Zach Gibson and Pumachan. Pumachan's at UMass now. He might not still be there. Gibson couldn't win the job at Georgia State. He beat, a together North Carolina team with those guys. But then you have the Bowling Green losses. And, I'm trying to think, like, there's a few games not on that level, like Virginia Tech last year. Now, I know we were banged up in the quarterback room, we're banged up in the running back room, but those are games you gotta win. And for Brent Key to take a step forward as a coach and us as a team this year, you've really got to be able to shut the door on those games when you can. But Georgia Tech's not untalented. There's a lot of talent on this team. So we'll see. Who do we return? Obviously, Haynes King. Everyone really high on Haynes King this year because he's just a tough son of a bitch. He's probably one of the toughest guys playing quarterback right now. I mean, the guy played without being able to throw more than 5 yards downfield, immense shoulder pain, and just got it done when he was called to come in a press conference. Said he talked to Buster. Buster was like, "Hey, do you think you could run?" And this is almost an indictment of Georgia Tech. Like, hey, we know that you're all gimped up, but if you get hit by 350-pound guys on that shoulder, is that going to hurt anything? I'll talk to my doctor. No. Hell of a player in Haynes King. It's going to be key this year that he remains healthy. If he plays anything like he did last year, which is go watch Haynes King. Go watch a full Georgia Tech game last year where Haynes King started all 4 quarters and count the number of times he slid. You're not going to have to go to your second hand. The dude's got to be able to avoid those big hits this year. It doesn't make any sense to put your shoulder down to get an extra 2 yards when you get met 15 yards down the field, and it makes no sense. Now, maybe the best kept secret, Aaron Philo behind him, if he does go down, is a more than capable guy. His first touchdown pass came against Miami last year. True freshman, 18, 19 years old or whatever he is. Dude just finds the open guy. He just finds the open guy. On the offensive line, we do lose some pieces. Now, I know a lot of people on the Tech front are going to say, well, Key's really done wonders with this offensive line. Nothing to worry about. True freshman, most likely at center, makes me nervous. And you're replacing both tackles. So you keep both guards, Keelan Rutledge and Joe Fusel. Those are 2 game-proven, solid guys. You do bring in Ethan McKinney, who was a true freshman All-American, didn't play last year, but still, there could be some question marks on offensive line. We'll have to see. You bring back Malik Rutherford, who's a hell of a player. And look, the big story in the offseason for Tech, you lose Eric Singleton Jr. to Auburn. One of the best receivers to come through Georgia Tech in some time, gets paid more than Buster's making to be the OC. He was an all-ACC, first-team all-ACC guy. Who does Georgia Tech bring in? This is a shocker. Eric Rivers Was he all conference? No, he was an All-American last year. So you replace an all-conference guy for an All-American. Eric Rivers is going to be a hell of a player. This wide receiver room has the potential to be very, very good, depending on the quarterback play this year. Some names you probably don't know if you're not a Tech fan: Isaiah Canyon, big 6'4" guy that can play. Zion Taylor, along with Malik Rutherford. There's some others in there that could bust it open. I think Georgia Tech's offense is going to be pretty good this year. Defense will have to kind of wait and see with the new DC, with new players on the defensive line. Anyways, I'm rambling a little bit. Before we get into this, we're going to name the King's Ransom preseason Georgia Tech Players of the Year. So offensive preseason King's Ransom Player of the Year, Haynes King. Look, was it going to be anyone else? No, it could have been Jamal Haynes. We haven't talked about Jamal Haynes. Jamal Haynes, one of the better running backs in the country, probably going to get drafted. A tough guy to get down. Go watch that Miami game. If he can stay healthy this year along with Haynes King, it's going to be a hell of a season. King's Ransom Defensive Player of the Year, Kyle Eford. Any guy that wears a neck collar in 2025 has a massive set of balls, which is everything you need to be the King's Ransom Defensive Player of the Year for Georgia Tech this year. Freshman King's Ransom Player of the Year, Christian Garrett, a guy that we flipped from Georgia. And if you're smart enough to decide to come to Georgia Tech over Georgia, you're going to be a freshman player of the year as far as I'm concerned. A guy that's probably going to get some snaps this year with how thin that defensive line is as well. So there you have it. Let's get into the season prediction. All right, so let's get into it, predicting every game for the 2025 season. And boy, am I giddy about this first one. Colorado fans have been louder than they've ever been. I think that they're delusional in a lot of ways. They lose almost everything that made them good at the times they were good last year. They do bring in Juju Lewis out of Carrollton, just up the road from where I used to live. But he's a true freshman. I tried to tell Colorado fans that, hey, he might not start out of the gate. You bring in a decent guy out of the portal. No, he didn't come in just to ride the bench. And did I see his dad was bitching on Twitter, Julian Lewis's dad, about the potential of him not playing? Look, I think Colorado was the absolute worst place for him to go for a guy that's a prima donna. From everyone I've talked to that knows this guy, this could be a disaster for Julian Lewis, depending on how he's coached there. Didn't they have a press conference today or yesterday where one of Colorado's coaches was saying, we don't do depth charts, we do rep charts or something? Anytime you have a coach doing hokey bullshit like Jeff Collins did, you know you're in for a bad season. Now, cards on the table. I was wrong about Colorado last year. I said they would implode, particularly Dion, before October. I made a whole video saying I was wrong about that. And that's the difference between me and the Colorado fan, is I have good sense about me. Now, this game is in Colorado. It's sets up to be very similar to the way the Georgia Tech FSU game was last year, except there aren't as many expectations on Colorado. They're not a preseason top 10 team, but you couldn't have two teams that are more diametrically opposed into how they approach the game of football as a staff. Now, I know you can never convince a Colorado fan of that, but Georgia Tech doesn't have their Twitter handles on their practice jerseys. You know, Georgia Tech isn't worried about their social media. Georgia Tech isn't worried about their stats in the way that Dion was with his son, and probably if Julian Lewis plays the way he'll be. Make no mistake, Deion Sanders fired a coordinator because he didn't like the way he was calling plays for his son. I mean, this isn't even football at some point. Compare that to Haynes King, who could have broken every Georgia Tech record in the Gasparilla Bowl, not last year, but the year before, for single season passing. And we ran the ball 30-something straight times, and Haynes King was cheering it on the whole way. It's just completely different, the approaches these two teams have. Setting that aside, Georgia Tech just returns way more. In my opinion, Georgia Tech is a more complete team. In my opinion, Georgia Tech is a more focused team. And I think Georgia Tech goes into Colorado. And man, I hope that this really gets Colorado and Deion Sanders fans' panties in a wad. It would not surprise me if Georgia Tech wins this game by 3 scores on the road. I just think Georgia Tech's going to be ready. I think Georgia Tech's a better team. And I think, again, Georgia Tech's a more complete team. So go type about that if you're a mouth-drooling Colorado fan. Next, was that Garner Webb? Nothing to talk about there if you can't beat Gardner Webb. I'm not going to say I'm going to jump off the 285 overpass because I think I said that about Bowling Green, and I'm still here. So I guess that's the only thing I've lied about. Now, probably the biggest and most important game on Georgia Tech's schedule is this Clemson game. This is technically a rivalry. It really hasn't been. Georgia Tech hasn't won this game since Deshaun Watson's freshman year at Clemson, and that's only because he got hurt in the first quarter of that game and Cole Stout came in for Clemson. I think we've only been close maybe 2 or 3 times against Clemson. I mean, Clemson has just dominated Georgia Tech for the past decade or so. Now, this is a lot of people's sleeper pick for an upset, big upset this season. It's at Bobby Dodd. Georgia Tech's going to be ready for this game. And look, I'll admit, I listened to Lou's thing. He's not wrong by saying Bobby Dodd hasn't been, this tough place to play necessarily. I mean, we're not even selling out our stadium. It was 56,000. It's I think 52 now since they took out the Edge Center or whatever in the north stands. But the crowd can, if you've never been to Bobby Dodd, the crowd can be a factor. If the game, like Miami happens, the crowd was a factor in that. If it comes down to the wire, that place can get loud. The thing with playing Clemson is they probably have the most complete offense in the country, or they could very well have the most complete offense in the country. They're the only team in the PFF rankings that are top 5 in their quarterback room and top 5 in their wide receiver room. They return virtually everything. They don't bring in a DC that's never called plays before. What is it? Tom Allen they bring in, a proven guy that you have to think is going to improve their defense. Now, what was the problem with Clemson's defense last year? They couldn't stop the run. Now, if they can't stop the run week 3 of this year, they could get beat, and they could get beat by 10 points or more just because Georgia Tech's going to be able to control the clock. That being said, as much as I think this could come down to the wire, the question marks on the defensive line for me with Georgia Tech and how good Cade Klubnik is in that wide receiver room, I can't pick us to beat Clemson even at home week 3. Now, Pigskin Pete's going to be staying at the new Cassaday Rec for this game, so it should be a ton of fun. But I'm not picking us to beat Clemson until we do, and I don't see anything this year that leads me to believe, this is definitely the year. Now, Temple, obviously, I think that's going to be a win. The interesting thing with this is the last time we played Temple, Moron Collins was the coach. Take a second, pause the video if you need to. When Jeff Collins was a coach, coaching against the team he left, that's right, he left Temple to come to Georgia Tech. How many points did Georgia Tech score against Temple? Think about it. Type your answer. 2. They scored 2 points against Temple. So, in a weird way, probably for no one else, but for WreckTalk, this is somewhat of a grudge match, which is embarrassing to say, but I think we get the win against Temple. Wake Forest has a new coach. They lost a massive amount of talent in the portal last year with Dave Clawson leaving. They've been down now for 2 or 3 years, basically since Sam Hartman left to go to Notre Dame, the place where ACC quarterbacks go to die. Thanks, Notre Dame. I said there was nothing that I could see that would lead me to believe that Georgia Tech's going to beat Clemson. There's nothing I can see that's going to lead me to believe that we're going to lose to Wake Forest. So not a lot to say about that game. Virginia Tech. Now, Virginia Tech is a grudge match. If there's any game I could have back from last year, it would either be Louisville or Virginia Tech, and it would probably be Virginia Tech. Georgia Tech definitely had the team to beat Virginia Tech, and that's the game that you just didn't show up for whatever reason, and you can't let that happen if you're looking to improve this season, because if we go 7-6 or 7-5 in the regular season again this year, then I do think some questions come up of like, okay, what are we doing here? Like, you can't just keep winning 7 games a year and then our stated goals are ACC championship or playoffs. By the way, I love Diet Coke, in case you didn't know. That being said, and look, I went back and forth on a lot of these when I was planning this video out. I think we beat Virginia Tech. If this was in Blacksburg again, I probably would pick Virginia Tech. So through the first 6 games, I've got Georgia Tech going 5-1. I mean, that would be phenomenal. I do think that, though. I do think we beat Colorado. And then aside from Colorado and me picking us to lose to Clemson, I mean, who else do you think Tech's going to lose to in that? Now, Duke. Duke is up. Duke's one of the better teams in the ACC for the past, since Manny's been there and beforehand when Elko was there. However, for whatever reason, Georgia Tech has had Duke's number. Georgia Tech just plays Duke well. Georgia Tech dominated Duke last year. Now, the scoreboard didn't necessarily, like, it wasn't a blowout, but I was at that game, and that game was never really in contention. Georgia Tech was able to do whatever they wanted. I do think Georgia Tech's going to be better this year. I know Duke brings in, are they paying a guy from Tulane $4 million to be their quarterback? I think they are. I got us winning our, can I count 1, 2, 3, 4? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 of our first 7 games. I mean, if this happens, you wouldn't be able to tell me anything. That's what I got us doing, though. Now, Syracuse loses everything off their team last year. In fact, I just got a comment from someone saying, no, I understand how you would come to that, but we got this, that, and the other. But Syracuse loses a quarterback that broke every single season record. Their top 6, like, production wide receivers or something like that. Their top 6, their top 3 leading wide receivers gone. McCord gone. Top 6 leading tacklers gone. And I haven't seen from their portal class, they're bringing in guys that tell you, oh yeah, they're going to be able to avoid taking a step back this year. I don't see us losing this game either. And it's at home at Bobby Dodd. I got us winning another one. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7-1, and in contention for the ACC championship. So then we go on you're going to laugh if you're not a Tech fan. It's not a brutal road stretch, but these are the road stretches where I think Tech team tends to implode. I think this is where injury issues with Haynes King, like, I don't think Haynes King will be healthy for this game. I don't think Haynes King will be 100% healthy past the Wake Forest game, because I think we're going to play him the same way that we did last year. Buster Faulkner in the press conference said, hey, we told Haynes King, you go out there and be you. Haynes King being 100% him is probably going to be him not being healthy past Wake Forest, and then we'll be relying more and more on Philo as we go on. I think that really starts to show up, along with some injuries probably on the defensive line at the NC State game, and this pains me to say it's going to be on the road. I know Pigskin Pete hates Dave Doran. CJ Bailey for NC State is a real one, and when no one thinks anything of NC State, that's when they tend to rattle off a pretty good year. I'm going to be going to this game. This is one of the road games I'm going to be going to this year. I think we take our second loss on the road at NC State. Like I said, I think we'll be banged up. And I think going on the road might be a little bit too much for us. Now, I might get run off the internet by Tech fans here. I have a ton of respect for Bill O'Brien. I think he's doing really good things. at Boston College. And you know what? Shout out for him for saying, you know what, Casanellos, if you're going to fumble every other drive, we're going to bench you. All right. He benched them and let them leave. Hey, and I think they'll be better off for it. I think they're going to be a better team. My sleeper pick for the ACC, a team that no one thinks anything of that ends up finishing near the top, would be Boston College. I think Georgia Tech takes their second loss, plagued with injuries, on the road against Boston College. I'd have to look. I'm sure Key has taken back-to-back losses. It hasn't happened that often. They tend to bounce back. And I think we bounce back against Pitt. Now, I think Pitt's going to be a pretty good team this year. I think Holstein's a hell of a quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks in the conference. But I think we come back home and bounce back against Pitt. And what does that bring us? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 3 going into Georgia, which would be good, which would be a good year. That would be an improvement. However, it doesn't give you a marquee win. I think this year, really for Georgia Tech to take a step up, you got to beat Clemson or Georgia this year. You got to beat Clemson or Georgia. And look, I'm not going to do any like silly call Macho Reckon for this. You should have beat Georgia last year. Now, I did hear Lou saying like, oh, you missed your opportunity. I know this is going to be crazy to you guys. I don't see it that way. Yeah, we did miss an opportunity. That I'm not saying that we didn't. But to look at it like, oh, we're only going to get one opportunity every decade to beat Georgia is horseshit. Everything I hear from Georgia fans is, oh, we want the rivalry to be more competitive. Well, a competitive rivalry would be Georgia Tech winning it every other year, and your small, feeble brains couldn't handle that. I can still hear Georgia fans bitch, whining, and complaining about refs the year before last. Anytime you play a close game, you bitch about refs like no one I've ever heard. Now, Georgia fans are making fun of us. Oh, you sold this game to your own home game to play at Mercedes-Benz. You can't have it both ways, though. You can't say Georgia Tech doesn't take football seriously and invest in the program, and then they take steps to inject money in the program. And you better watch out, because when Georgia Tech does win this rivalry again, it's not just going to be a one-off. Georgia Tech's going to rip off 2 or 3 in a row. All right. And it could start this year. There are questions for Georgia this year. They are verifiably worse without Carson Beck. They're a worse team without Carson Beck. We'll have to see what Gunnar Stockton does. Hasn't really played, though. I get that he played in the SEC title game, yada, 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 whatever. Can you improve? You got to be better in rush offense. Y'all all want your OC fired yesterday for some reason. I'm probably not going to do a prediction video for Georgia, but I got you losing at least 3 games this year. However, and this is WreckTalk, the person, not the character talking. Like with Clemson, I'm not going to pick Georgia Tech to beat Georgia until they do. You just got to do it. All right. I'm tired of coming on here and, oh, this is the year. First of all, that you even look at the rivalry that way is bullshit. All right, go out there and win the game, and then I'll pick you to win it. However, we didn't miss our opportunity once in a decade. I'm telling you, Georgia Tech's going to win this game at some point, and they're going to rattle off a few in a row. So I've got Georgia Tech going 8-4 this year. So 7-6, 7-6, 8-4, 9-4, or 8 whatever. I can't do the math right now. It's tired. I've moved. I can't think. Can I just think for a second? Which I think would be a decent year. That's probably a disappointment for some Georgia Tech fans, and even others that have Tech winning 9 or 10 games this year. If they win 10 games, you got them beating everyone except Georgia and Clemson. And I think there's way too many questions on defense for me to pick that preseason. I've got to watch Georgia Tech play this year and see what that defensive line looks like before I'd be willing to go out on a limb and say that. So that's the season prediction video. And now for the announcement. So I've thought long and hard about this, and I've thought like, man, this community can be really toxic sometimes, and I don't know, like, at times I feel like I'm a worse person, like I'm more aggressive, I'm less agreeable. It affects my personal relationships. Like I have a hard time turning off, um, the whole YouTube trash talking thing, and I'm like, man, do I really want to do this past uh, this season? And I just don't. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Little pigs, let me in. WreckTalk ain't going nowhere. All right, he's gonna be around for a long time. Oh, sorry, I think I just stepped in a pile of dog shit. What kind of place you running here, Wreck? What? What is that? That's not a pile of dog shit. That's Colorado. Are you kidding me right now? It's going to be PP Pants City real soon. What are we calling me? Vegan? Get back here.